string
of their last years together are being spilled out in a sensational courtroom battle. The case has finally landed in court after several years of legal wrangling. Christian claims he first learned that Hudson had AIDS only after it was made public. Christian says he was shocked to find out the man he shared a bed with for 2 years had been privately diagnosed with the disease a year earlier.
Let the record show the jury is properly seated in the jury box and counsel and the parties are present.
In an $11 million court battle that got underway this week, it is Christian's contention that Hudson and others knowingly withheld the diagnosis from him, a decision that put his very life at risk. In his attorney's opening remarks, the graphic nature of the relationship with Hudson was described.
I've got to be blunt in talking about it. Alternating anal intercourse between the two men. Neither one used a condom.
Although Christian, now 34, concedes that he currently does not have AIDS, he fears it may develop later, and he claims he has suffered emotional distress because of it. He once elaborated on that aspect of the case during an appearance on The Donahue Show.
This is the way I feel about it. Whether or not I come down with AIDS, if I come down with it, it's even more tragic. But I think a person has a duty to disclose to the people they are with that they have a disease like that. Yeah.
Christian was the first witness called at the jury trial, which began today. The trial is expected to last 6 weeks.
In a highly publicized court case involving AIDS, a Los Angeles jury ruled today that the late actor Rock Hudson was guilty of outrageous conduct in failing to tell his lover that he had AIDS. And it was a precedent-setting action, obviously. The jury awarded Marc Christian $14.5 million, much more than the $11 million he was asking in his lawsuit against Hudson's estate and the actor's former secretary, Mark Miller. The suit claims Hudson and Miller conspired to keep the actor's disease a secret so that Hudson could continue to have sex with Marc Christian. The jury ruled that Christian suffered emotional distress because he wasn't told about the actor's condition. Christian has tested negative for exposure to the AIDS virus. By a movie star to keep a disease secret from his lover, a secret that could kill. Willie Monroe is in our newsroom now with the latest on the Rock Hudson jury decision today. Willie?
Well, Pete, the precedent could be the fact that the person sued and won without ever having come down with the disease. Marc Christian claimed he had high-risk sex with Rock Hudson 160 times, about 3 to 5 times a week, between June of 1984 and February of 1985, when he claims the romantic relationship ended. He claims the actor never told him he had the AIDS virus, and neither did anybody else. The 7-woman, 5-man jury concluded it was outrageous conduct for Hudson to keep his disease a secret from his lover, and awarded Christian $14.5 million, $3.5 million more than he asked for. Gay rights advocates in San Francisco say the jury sent the wrong message.
I have mixed feelings about the case. Of course, what Rock Hudson did was irresponsible. I don't think there's any question about that. But I think the case sends a dangerous message, which is that if people engage in unprotected sex and become exposed to the AIDS virus, that it's someone else's fault and not their own fault.
Basically, all along, we've suggested and we've told people that to stay protected, you need to take responsibility for yourself as well as for your partner.
Christian filed suit in November of 1985, a month after Hudson died of AIDS at the age of 59. A popular leading man in the movies, Hudson never acknowledged publicly that he was gay. Though Christian has repeatedly tested negative for the AIDS virus, he contends since he discovered Hudson had the disease, he has lived with an even greater fear of contracting AIDS. The jury found that Hudson's secretary and personal friend for more than 30 years, Mark Miller, knew Hudson had the virus, but conspired to keep the information from Hudson's lover so they could continue to have unsafe sex. Making the AIDS carrier responsible for informing others about the disease is one thing, but making other people responsible is something else.
I see that as potentially very dangerous and very frightening, because what that does is it puts anybody in the position of knowing that someone else has tested positive, of having to play policeman and make some kind of decision about whether they need to inform their sexual partner. Well, of course, that puts confidentiality completely out of the window. That totally discourages people from taking the test. So I think if the conspiracy argument was successful here, it is a very frightening precedent.
The judge has issued a gag order in this case, so we haven't heard from the principals, any reaction from them. The jury returns tomorrow to consider whether punitive damages should also be awarded.
And that could be as interesting as this decision was today in terms of those signals. Thank you, Willie.
Thank you.
So we'll see where this goes tomorrow when we find out about the punitive damages, but already a number of lawyers speaking out on this whole issue on both sides of the question.
And expecting a wave of litigation in the coming weeks.
Certainly are.
A man who...
Counsel
Christian $14.5 million because Hudson had concealed his AIDS from Christian. Well, today, Christian's lawyer asked the jury to double that amount as a message to the world that people with AIDS have a duty to inform their partners.
Against Hudson's secretary, Marc Miller, again for conspiring to keep Hudson's AIDS a secret so Christian would have sex with him.
Since this started, I've had several friends who have died of AIDS, others have become ill. To my knowledge, not one of them acted in the way that Rock Hudson acted.
Experts say this verdict sends a clear message that telling a partner of sexual risk goes beyond a moral obligation, that it's now a legal one.
Even so, San Francisco gay rights attorney Ben Schatz calls the judgments excessive and irresponsible.
This opens a possibility that people will be able to sue their spouses or their sexual partners in the future for having an affair outside the relationship, and thereby potentially putting them at risk for AIDS, regardless of whether that person does in fact become infected.
Marc Miller's attorney, Andrew Banks.
We're going to take the appropriate legal steps to attack what I think is an outrageous verdict in terms of the amounts.
Some critics believe the verdicts will encourage unsafe sex. Christian says times have changed.
I hope that nobody would be as naive as I was in 1982 or 83 and 1989.
Christian says he doesn't expect any money for 3 years, that he'll give some of it to AIDS charities, and that in the time between, he plans to get a job. In San Francisco, Wayne Friedman, News Center 4.
And they've awarded that lover, Marc Christian, $14.5 million in damages for emotional distress. The jury ruled that Hudson conspired to keep his disease a secret so Christian would continue to have sex with him. So far, Christian has tested negative for the AIDS virus. Evan?